impunity and to promote deterrence, to ensure that the rule of law remains relevant. Equally, we must never forget why we act, which is in the best interest of the victims as their representatives. PCHR's experience and that of other legal organisations, both national and international, has shown that despite its pressing legal obligations, justice for Palestinian victims is unattainable within the Israeli legal system. Israeli investigations are inadequate and in violation of international legal obligations, while prosecutions, particularly at the command level, are simply not forthcoming. This sentiment was confirmed by Justice Goldstone in his report, and has been evidenced by the inadequate progress to date with respect to investigations of allegations of crimes committed during last year's offensive. As an example, PCHR, the organisation I work for, submitted 450 criminal complaints on behalf of 941 victims. So far, we've received 15 responses, and these are only responses to say that some form of investigation in most cases a military investigation has been undertaken. We submitted 1,028 civil complaints and have received 7 responses. There has been one prosecution, but for the theft of a credit card by an Israeli soldier. This is why the Goldstone report was so important. For the first time, an international body laid out specific, detailed and realistic mechanisms by which accountability could be pursued and victims' rights upheld. In the face of Israel's unwillingness to conduct genuine investigations and prosecution, and in light of the Palestinian Authority's lack of jurisdiction over Israelis, we have to turn to international justice. Given that the International Criminal Court lacks jurisdiction, and in the absence of a Chapter 7 resolution by the Security Council, which is made impossible by the veto power of the United States, there's only one other option: the pursuit of universal jurisdiction. Universal jurisdiction is a legal principle which grants individual states, acting as de facto members of the representatives of the international community, jurisdiction over select international crimes such as torture, crimes against humanity, genocide and grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions, without a traditional jurisdictional nexus. Essentially, it's the horrific nature of the crimes that are deemed to shock the conscience of humanity, that provide the basis for jurisdiction. Essentially, it means that the state in question need not have a direct connection with the crimes committed. Rather, it's in the interest of each and every state, as a member of the international community or a high contracting party to the Geneva Conventions, that these crimes not go unpunished and that those responsible be held to account. In 2002, PCHR turned to the pursuit of universal jurisdiction, and with partners in the UK and Spain, we've made some serious advancements and very real gains. Universal jurisdiction and accountability is the focus of our work, along with the implementation of the Goldstone Report's recommendations. There are 2 key long-term goals. It's inconceivable that Palestinian victims should continue to suffer from a gap in international law, that they be denied the law's protection. Their legitimate right to an effective judicial remedy and the equal protection of the law must be upheld. Those responsible for torture, murder, grave breaches of the Geneva Conventions and crimes against humanity must be held to account. The law must be upheld, and I think most importantly, it must be seen to be upheld. There have been 2 consistent features of Israel's occupation: continuous and escalating violations of international law, as shown by last year's offensive, and impunity for these actions. At PCHR, we believe that these are interconnected and dependent on each other. I'd like to emphasize too that the rule of law is an essential component of any possible sustainable peace. This is one of the major criticisms that was thrown out about the Goldstone report, or about any pursuit for accountability, that it will hinder the peace process. But I'd like to emphasize that human rights are minimum standards. They're owed to each and every one of us as human beings. They're not open for negotiation. They're not subject to political compromise. They're each and every one of our own individual and inviolable rights. The Oslo process and the reality of life in the occupied Palestinian territory today show what happens when international law is disregarded, when human rights are cast aside in the interests of a political process. The rule of law and accountability are not inimical to peace. They are central components. We must pursue universal jurisdiction as a path to universal justice, whereby each and every member of the international community, each and every individual, is granted the law's protection, and where all those who violate the law are held to account. Without accountability, without the rule of law, how can we guarantee that what happened in Gaza last year won't happen again? And equally, if we can't guarantee that it will happen again, under the glare of the media in one of the most famous conflicts of the world, how can we guarantee that it won't happen in other, less publicized regions? This is an issue, I think, of universal importance, and it's time to act. Thank you.
Thank you, Daragh. The press kit, which is available at the door, the press kit about the film, gives details on how to contact the filmmaker, Philip Risk, his website and his blog. In reacting first to the film, I would just like to respond that the film is documenting, I don't really know how to say it, Samud,
solidarity.
Solidarity, in the spirit of Gandhi, Mohandas Gandhi, Nelson Mandela, Václav Havel. I find it very hard to see hope. I find it very hard to see hope expressed in the film. Obviously, the people who are portrayed there are staying on. I suppose hope is expressed in planting a tree, but what I've seen there leaves me feeling more hopeless than when I came in tonight. And that isn't the attitude I want to have, and not the attitude that I want to convey to you, but that's just what I feel. Where, Daragh, is hope? Do you see any hope in this landscape?
Well, first of all, I think I'd just like to say that Beit Hanun, that area in Gaza, which is part of the film, now more or less no longer exists. It's along the border beside Erez, and it was the northwest and the north of the Gaza Strip were the most heavily targeted areas during the war, and just entire areas, I've never seen anything like it, were just completely flattened. Since then, Israel has imposed a buffer zone of between 300 meters and 1.8 kilometers. No one's quite sure how far it is, in which they don't allow anything. Like you see, they bulldoze the land, and the idea, or so they claim, is to prevent rocket attacks into Israel. But it's not really a very effective excuse, I think, because rockets, if they are going to be fired, can be fired from anywhere. And the destruction of civilian property like that, it's collective punishment. But in terms of hope, I think there's always hope. I think there has to be. Some of the most intractable problems in the world have been solved. Where I'm from, in the north of Ireland, there's peace in a conflict that most people never thought would end. Apartheid has ended in South Africa. I think there is always hope. Sometimes you can't see it, and it's a bit far away, but it is most definitely there. And I think one of the most inspiring things about Palestine is the dedication and the work and all the effort that's going into achieving justice, and I suppose ultimately an independent state, but a drive that is very much centered on human rights and international law and justice. And I think that bodes very well for the future and for anything past independence.
Please ask questions, comments, your responses to the film. There's a microphone at the back of the room. Daragh, I'd like to continue with asking you how you became involved in the Palestinian issue yourself.
You're going to embarrass me now or something. I've always been interested in the Middle East. I lived in Iraq when I was a child, and I've been interested the whole way growing up. And when you start to get interested in international law, I think Palestine is it's a very pressing issue. It's a very real issue, and there's an awful lot of human rights organizations such as PCHR, Al-Mazan, where Sarah worked, that are doing pretty amazing work in very difficult circumstances, and it's quite an inspiration to go into work every day and to see people who've been doing the same thing for 20 or 30 years and who still believe in it and who still carry on. It's, like I said, it's quite an inspiring place and a very, very interesting place to live too.
I should say that the film has come to the Foreign Correspondents Club through the encouragement and courtesy of the Palestinian Solidarity Committee, which tonight is represented by several people here, Stuart Ward, Berg Ward, and Stuart. Would you care to say something about the Palestinian Solidarity Committee and how we might find out more about the issue? Yes.
Good evening. We had an event here on the 18th of January, which was our own event, the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, PSC Thailand, organized ourselves and paid for. We are not a big group. We are certainly not a group with lots of resources, but we are a number of people, Farang and some Thai, who started this thing in December 2007. I myself worked for the Palestinian cause in Sweden before I moved here to Thailand, and there was no solidarity group here. So I and a colleague of mine, Suna, who's sitting over there, who's the secretary of the group now, we started one. And so we've been in existence a little bit more than 2 years. And we are motivated by the fact that, certainly from my own point of view, and I think I speak for all of us who are part of the group, that we see this, the injustice that is Palestine. We see it as the greatest injustice in the world. That is certainly what drives me and why I am working in my spare time with this particular issue and not another one. One, of course, I care about people less off than myself. That sounds incredibly cheesy, perhaps, but it's true. I suppose I'm one of these people that a lot of in the American debate would be called a bleeding liberal, and I am proud of it. I definitely am. And for me, again, the biggest injustice in this world today is what is being done to the Palestinians. And it is possible, I think Daragh has been pointing this out, that it is possible for us as individuals. It can seem so enormous, such an enormous task, especially bearing in mind what we are up against. The Israel lobby in America is, if not the biggest, certainly one of the biggest and most powerful there. I think it's very significant